You're watching the Faculty of the Mace show, where faculty authority is promoted and protected in the Academy of the 21st century.
The second part of our accreditation recommendations are as follows. Accreditation decisions should include a scope statement which specifically states major areas that are excluded from the accreditation decision. I think we do a very good job in saying what our accreditation decisions include. I feel that we do a less good job of saying what they exclude. In fact, if you look at the Senate Help Committee hearings that were recently held, you'll see that there's a lot of questions and misunderstandings about both what, in fact, accreditation is intended to do and also what accreditation should, in fact, be doing. So I believe it's important to make exclusionary statements from our accreditation decisions. Now, it's obviously impossible to state everything that a decision does not include, but yet it's important to state some of the major exclusionary factors to avoid confusion by both regulators and the general public. Let me give you an example of two possible exclusionary statements, and these are only for example purposes. Here's one. No covert activities are performed to uncover Title IV funding fraud. Here's another possible statement. Accounting statements are not subject to forensic accounting analysis and techniques. Notice that these are free market solutions that do not require any further legislation or regulation. In fact, they can be implemented immediately. Let's use the Alta College's case study as an example for the implementation of our policy recommendations. Since Westwood Online's accreditation is in deferral and it is currently under a show cause order by ACCSC, then the following procedure should be followed. Westwood Online and the Westwood College campuses are all owned by Alta Colleges and presumably share the same C-level management team. Therefore, it must be assumed that these institutions are a common entity. The subject application for accreditation must then be received with prejudice by ACICS. ACICS must be in communication with ACCSC at the executive level. Westwood's record at ACCSC must be transferred to ACICS for consideration. In order for ACICS to perform the necessary due diligence required for possible accreditation, Alta management must be required to sign a legal release permitting full disclosure of its prior record at ACCSC. Both accrediting organizations, however, should hold these records as proprietary information. ACICS should include an analysis of the information released by ACCSC in its final accreditation decision. Again, these are free market solutions. They do not require further legislation or regulation, and they can be implemented easily in the current time frame. Next, let's take a look at the Faculty of the Mace policy recommendation number 2, and that is a fully informed faculty with full local disclosure and transparency and appropriate faculty authority must be ensured to protect educational stakeholders. And why is this so? Well, there are several mechanisms that protect the educational process. Let's take a look at them. Higher education policy analysts have identified 4 main mechanisms to safeguard the integrity of the educational process. The first mechanism is outside disclosure and transparency. That is, disclosure to entities outside of the Academy. And certainly the Faculty of the Mace supports that mechanism. This outside disclosure supports the second mechanism, which is self-regulation, and supports the third mechanism, which is government regulation. And finally, the fourth main mechanism is to place funding and decision-making as close to the educational consumer as possible. However, as indicated by the Senate Help Committee hearings and the Government Accountability Office testimony at these hearings, in this instance, these four mechanisms, outside disclosure, self-regulation, government regulation, and educational consumer empowerment, whether we look at them individually or in combination, they are somewhat effective, but they have not worked as well as we would like. One likely reason that explains this is a factor called the principal-agent problem. And this issue is well known and has been discussed by many economists, including Dr. Robert E. Martin, Professor Emeritus of Centre College. However, other than pointing this factor out, we will not further discuss this issue at this time. So, what's the missing ingredient? We have four major mechanisms in place, and yet we see they are less than completely effective. We believe that the missing ingredient is, as we've already said, a fully informed faculty with full local disclosure and transparency and appropriate faculty authority. Now, why is this so? Why do we believe this? Well, as you can see, that in order to persist, the questionable practices that have been discussed at the Senate Help Committee hearings must either be completely hidden from the faculty or at least not exposed to the purview of the faculty. As I've already discussed and stated in episode 1, these practices simply cannot survive the light of day. It's also clear that the other solutions that have been implemented, either alone or in combination, have been shown to be only marginally effective. In conclusion, complete due diligence in national accreditation is of the utmost importance to all of the following: the credibility of the accreditation process itself, the credibility of both the current and the prospective accreditor of an institution, and the credibility of all nationally accredited institutions. We believe that combined with the agency model of accreditation, a fully informed faculty with full local disclosure and transparency and appropriate faculty authority must be ensured to protect all educational stakeholders. I believe that the entire post-secondary educational community, as well as regulators, will be carefully watching the integrity of this accreditation process. In episode 5, we will examine non-academic risk factor screening, and we will answer the question, is there appropriate due diligence by schools? How do you feel about the recommendations regarding accreditation made in this episode? Let us know by visiting facultyofthemace.com. There you will find many ways to join the community and leave your feedback. Thanks for watching. I'll see you inside the next video.
Produced at Studio C, Colorado, USA.